What we have is complete disconnects between all stakeholders. It's a whole of society problem, unfortunately, which makes it more complex. I'm Dr. Alicia Wanless. I am a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where I run the Partnership for Countering Influence Operations, which is a multi-stakeholder initiative aimed at fostering evidence-informed policymaking for governance of the information environment. So focusing on disinformation actually prevents us from seeing the wider system where these things are occurring. Typically, how we're looking at the information environment right now is very much piecemeal. We look at a singular threat like disinformation or violent extremism. We look at a specific technology like Twitter, if it is more easy to research. And we look at specific threat actors. What this does is it doesn't actually tell us how the system works. It tells us just what that kind of problem is doing at that specific time, not what to do about it or how it changes the system or what happened before that. So this is a lot like if we were to study the environment by only looking at singular things, like looking at a specific tree to try to understand a forest and really only looking at that tree for one season as opposed to over years to understand the cycle and what its role is. So right now, there's only two ways that we're really understanding the entire system. One is case studies and the other one is experiments. The case studies, as I said, are very piecemeal, and that might lead us to believe things like, oh, we can get rid of the pest that's killing that one type of tree by pesticides, by killing it with this type of chemical. But that misses the point. There might be cycles that pest comes and goes. It might not actually kill the entire forest or even that one tree that we're worried about. And so what we're doing is we may be jumping to solutions that are actually more harmful that we didn't know would actually hurt the wider system. I think the bigger problem is actually how we try to make decisions in an open and free information environment that can be heavily manipulated in many different ways. Disinformation is one of many challenges that we face that may be impeding our ability to make decisions in the public interest. I think the challenge is that we always look for that singular problem and that singular solution and assume that that's going to change everything about the system that we're operating in. So I think fact-checking and media literacy are very important. They're probably not the only things we need to be doing like this. I think that we just need to build up a better understanding of all of the other ways in which the information environment works. So is it an issue with, for example, investments in education? Is it an issue with availability of media? Is it an issue with infrastructure? How are people actually experiencing things like the internet or news media? What are the controls on that? What are the regulations that are in place and how is that impacting the free flow and quality of information? Are there investments that need to be made elsewhere that we're missing? What I would ask is that if we came together as a community and we could start to build up that kind of data on a national level, we might get a better understanding of what types of ecosystems are there. Are there lessons that could be applied across ecosystems? For example, Finland's national information ecosystem is very different from the US's. So what might work there might not work in the US. But we won't actually ever get to that level of pattern analysis and comparison if we don't look at the same things. And if we don't look at them over time, and it comes down to a lack of a systemic approach and a lack of mandate by anybody to try to lead on this. So what I mean here are two different things. One is the research problem. The research model is currently broken. It's very project-based. It's very much driven by what is being covered in the media. What is the most pressing matter that is being pushed? Yesterday, it was disinformation. Today, it's artificial intelligence. And so research is very much driven by where the money is, and it's very limited in scope and time by how it's funded. The same problem exists in civil society in terms of what projects are going to be delivered, how long they're going to be delivered. And what we have is complete disconnects between all stakeholders. It's a whole of society problem, unfortunately, which makes it more complex, but you have government, industry, civil society, including academia, all kind of operating in their own silos, and then they're operating within silos within silos. So even at the government level, you have people who hold related files across departments. There is nobody inside a single government in most democracies that is responsible for bringing all of that together. And then in industry, it's split across companies and it's split across different problem sets. The only way that I see us getting out of that is investments to actually have some sort of center of gravity that can actually act as that systematizing function that brings those stakeholders together to collaborate in an independent manner that ensures the independence of stakeholders without as much power, like civil society, but also in terms of systematizing the research related to the information environment and then finding those gaps across ecosystems. So I have used the CERN model as an example in the past, and why I think that it's important is because we do need a massive investment that is sustainable. And the CERN offers a good model in that you have member countries who have agreed to contribute a percentage of their GDP in perpetuity. And that's the kind of level of stability that we need to really be able to understand the information environment, given how easily it is politicized. Just research is politicized. At the same time, I think that having that kind of member state driven commitment also creates a safeguard so that it can't be abused should any of those members descend into authoritarianism or have some domestic problems that may encourage them to want to abuse it. So I think that's kind of the level of investment that's required, which then who should be doing that? So I think we have a huge trust and credibility issue in terms of how we approach governance of the information environment that is unresolved. I think the biggest lesson for me in looking at this from a historical perspective, because again, I started looking at it from ancient Greece to today, is that humans are remarkably predictable in the sense that we keep reacting the same way to new technologies and changes in how information is processed and shared. What I would be worried about is that if this comes down to a content level in terms of who decides, then that really should be driven by wider society, with civil society very much in the lead. Unfortunately, again, we come back to this problem of how the system is structured, in that civil society and academics are deficited in terms of needing funding to be able to even be at the table and have those decisions. And there will always be people who are going to profit from it, who are going to use it and abuse it. And there will always be competitions between people who want their viewpoint to be the one that's adopted. And so in that, I think the major lesson is that humans will repeat the same patterns of behavior.